I was already holding the knife to cut the sheet cake. Blue frosting, plastic taxi figurine inexplicably parked next to a rattle, when the taxi driver sauntered into my backyard like he owned the lease on my humiliation. It was a Saturday in late May, humidity clinging to the cul-de-sac like a possessive ex, and the neighbors had gathered with folding chairs and Costco fruit trays to celebrate the miracle. In every selfie, in every auntie's Facebook Live, you can see me in the corner. The husband who thought his wife was doing overtime, smiling like a tourist in his own house. The driver had on a crisp polo, sunglasses on his head, and that smirk, like he'd just been handed the aux cord at someone else's family party. Someone had taped a baby on board diamond to the fence. Someone had also thought it would be cute to put tiny yellow and black checkered napkins on all the tables, as if our child had been conceived by the National Association of Metered Rides. I tell you this first because you need to understand the scale. People like to start hardship stories at the quaint beginning, at the first red flag, at the first whiff of betrayal. I'll do this American, dramatic, and backward. At the fireworks before we roll the tape, at the part where my life's GPS said, recalculating, and never stopped. My mother was the first to sense the strange gravity in the yard. Her eyes tracked the taxi driver the way a hawk tracks a shiny thing that shouldn't be in its sky. He shook hands with my brother, fist-bumped my neighbor, and then, God bless the suburban appetite for awkward, someone handed him a paper plate of barbecue like he wasn't the main character in a cautionary tale about infidelity and toxic love. My wife floated at the center of it all in a white sundress that made her look like an apology you might forgive if you were soft enough. She had changed since we married. There's no way to say that without sounding like a man who uses the word traditional as a life jacket. But the biggest change was the distance in her eyes, like she'd moved 2 counties away without renting a truck. The banner above the patio said, "All aboard baby," as if some committee had voted to make the inside joke a public art installation. The taxi driver, let's call him Buddy because in every town there's a Buddy, found a patch of shade and laughed with my wife's work friends who had been told he was just a friend from the community. There are 2 kinds of laughter at a party, the kind that wants to include you and the kind that announces you are a ghost. I was haunt-thin in that yard. Before the cake, before the balloon pop that would tell us pink or blue, a courier showed up at the gate holding an overnight envelope like a plot twist. DNA Express, the label said, and my aunt said, "Is that like DoorDash for drama?" I signed with the same hand that had paid our mortgage, our insurance, and the subscription that delivered artisanal dog treats because we were a family that did themed boxes. The envelope had been my idea, either the bravest or pettiest thing I've done, revenge by certified mail. The results inside were official in that bureaucratic, serif font way that makes even heartbreak look like paperwork. A grind of numbers and probabilities cooling in the afternoon heat. You could hear the cicadas pause to read. Somewhere a kid let a Capri Sun straw punch through the foil with the crispest pop, and that's when every head turned to me. What kind of man opens a letter like this at a party? Honestly, the kind who's been told for 3 months to trust the process, and realizes the process has 3 people in it. I read the numbers, and the numbers read me. People tell you betrayal feels like a stab. It didn't. It felt like a sudden clarity, like when you finally realize the radio has been on the wrong input for 2 years, and every drive has been an argument with static. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Probability the taxi driver had been rehearsing his swagger in the rearview mirror, 100%. My wife's face, complicated, hard to map, went through several time zones: shock, shame, anger, a brief layover in persuasion, and then the long red-eye flight to resignation. She took a step toward me, and Buddy reached, gentle as a county fair carnival prize, for her elbow. In a fair world, I would have made a scene. I would have flipped the cake. I might have become the headline people send each other with OMG. What I did instead was American polite, the kind you're taught at backyard baptisms and church potlucks, the kind that belongs to men who want to be safe. I nodded. I passed the envelope to my mother. I breathed. I remember 3 things after that: the baby balloon exploding into blue confetti like a sky crying over a bad punchline, the wind catching the checkered napkins so the fence looked like a starting line at a race I hadn't qualified for, and my neighbor murmuring to his wife, "Well, at least the kid will never have trouble getting a ride." The joke landed. People laughed the way people laugh when they want to leave a room standing, not crawling. And I, the husband of a cheating wife, the man who thought overtime could be a shelter you build with trust and texts, smiled in a way that made strangers feel safe around the truth. That was the ending that should have been the beginning. That's how the tape looks when you play it forward. Now, let's hit rewind and listen to the click of every mile marker we ignored. When I met her, my wife had that specific American ambition that looks like a set of color-coded planners and the skill to make a Trader Joe's sample lady deliver an extra dumpling just by listening well. She worked at a clinic, not exactly ER heroics, not exactly paper shuffling either. And I worked at a hardware store where the paint chips are tiny declarations of personality and every Saturday is a parade of suburban projects. We were an ordinary family with an ordinary dog in an ordinary ranch house with a mailbox strong enough to survive all 4 seasons and 3 HOA newsletters a month. Overtime crept in like a secular saint. It began as a story about the clinic losing 2 nurses to maternity leave and 1 to a Vegas elopement that turned into a lemon-fueled return flight. "Just a few weeks," she said, bringing home prepackaged salads with those little plastic forks that always make you feel like you're on a train. "We're a family," I said, and meant it. A family can carry a little extra. Then the weeks piled up like pizza boxes on the night of a playoff game you don't even watch. She'd leave in a rush, hair up, phone face down, coffee in the tumbler I bought her at a Christmas market where a man selling artisanal pickles told us he had a PhD. American life is an auction of stories at booths where everyone is convincing and the lights are gentle. I noticed the perfume first. Not the kind you buy because a commercial tells you a dress will cling to your laughter, but the sharp, clean smell of car freshener, specifically the new car kind, which we hadn't had since the Camry became a member of the "we don't lock it, nobody wants it" category. She'd come home with that scent on her cardigan, a yellow pine whisper attached to the fabric like a second language. "They changed the hallway cleaner," she said, and I believed her because I wanted to believe the world worked if you tilted it right. If you're counting red flags, add these. The way she'd choose the seat at Applebee's that let her see the parking lot instead of my face, the sudden seriousness about privacy that turned her phone into a national monument, the switched shift that always landed on the nights we used to watch trash TV and be tender. It wasn't all thunder. There were afternoons when she hugged me like she was sorry. There were mornings she made pancakes with blueberries in the shape of our initials, like a rom-com convinced hearts can be cooked in a skillet. People act like cheating arrives with a brass band. Sometimes it arrives with a whisper and a nap. The first time I saw the taxi was after I closed the hardware store on a Thursday when everyone buys a drill for a project they will abandon by Sunday. I took Oak Street home, the one that passes the car wash where teens preen with towels and Bluetooth speakers, and there it was, a yellow cab, old-school checker stripe, a relic in a rideshare age, idling like it knew my driveway by heart. My wife slid out of the back seat and adjusted her hair the way you do after any kind of intimacy. When she saw me, she startled into a smile bright enough to power a porch light. "Oh, they had to take my car to the shop," she said. "Buddy, he's kind of like the clinic's guy, gave me a lift." I wanted to ask why the clinic had a guy. I wanted to ask why that guy had eyes that looked like they believed in unearned intimacy, and why my wife dipped her head when he waved like a girl about to climb the high school bleachers and believed this moment was a movie. Instead, I kissed her cheek and smelled that not-quite perfume again, the scent of a clean interior purchased on sale at an auto parts store, and told myself love means assuming the best, even when the worst has a loyalty program. The American part of this is how the neighbors did their surveillance as a charity. "Saw a cab in your drive last night," Mr. Blevins said while we both stared at a patch of fescue like it was a grief we could fix with fertilizer. "You guys going somewhere?" The neighborhood Facebook group had theories the way an ocean has salt. "Anyone else notice the taxi circling?" one neighbor posted. "That's not Uber. Hatch safety first." A woman with a profile picture featuring two golden retrievers responded, probably a new driver trying to find the freeway. Someone else typed, "Just saying, the clinic parking lot has been wild after hours." That's American gossip. It wraps itself in community so it can feel like a service. I started counting miles on the Camry. I started keeping receipts, doctoring only my pride. "Diner?" I asked, holding up a slip from a 24-hour spot across town. "Oh, Miriam's birthday," she said, and smiled, like the truth was a breakfast special that came with a side of fries and a milkshake straw stuck with lipstick I didn't recognize. I could feel a new religion forming in me, the kind where the saints are screenshots and the miracles are timestamps. "I love you," she said, and it sounded real, which is the cruelest trick of all. To protect my sanity, I built a corkboard in the garage the way conspiracy theorists in movies do. String, push pins, maps printed from Google, a receipt taped next to a screenshot next to a photo my neighbor texted me of the cab in our neighborhood at 11:26 p.m. "Is this him?" my neighbor wrote, as if we were teammates on the same apology tour. The board made me feel the way Americans feel about DIY, empowered, righteous, doomed to make it worse. I listened to true crime podcasts at night like they were manuals for a very specific problem: how to catch your own life starting to cheat on you. If this is a parody, it's because grief starts to mimic what it loves. If this is a conspiracy story, it's because infidelity always requires at least two believers, and I had become a cult of one. When she told me she was late, my heart split into two tight-fisted prayers. Let it be mine, and let it be anyone's but his. It is possible to hold both. It is possible to sit in a Walgreens parking lot with a plastic bag full of tests and feel like you're about to take the SAT for a degree you never wanted. We went home. We waited. The kindest thing she did that month was cry alone in the bathroom and pretend the shower was loud enough to drown out her fear. The meanest thing she did was open the door with a smile that asked me to celebrate a future I was afraid to meet. "We're pregnant," she said, and American optimism poured into the room like a marching band at halftime. And there, for 1 week, I believed. I painted a nursery wall the color of early morning. I built a crib that came with 17 extra screws because I can follow directions. I posted a photo of the sonogram and got 100 hearts. People wrote family like it was a spell. People wrote can't wait like we were starting a renovation show where the only demolition would be walls, not trust. Then Buddy's cab idled outside again, and I realized overtime doesn't hum like that. I followed her the night I told her I'd be late. It's a classic move, the kind of thing a sitcom makes look petty and a thriller treats like a rite of passage. I felt both, ridiculous and righteous, a husband with a dashboard confession. She left the house with a tote bag that didn't look heavy enough to carry every lie it contained and slid into the back seat of Buddy's cab with the comfortable choreography of repetition. This is the part of the story where you expect a motel named after a bird, a neon sign blinking like a dying heart, rain, a confrontation that will trend on a platform you pretend you don't check. We had the neon, we had the drizzle. The motel was called The Gull, and the sign had been broken for so long it only read The Goo, which felt accurate. I parked across the street at a tire shop that closes at 6 and never fixes anyone's sorrow after. When you are about to ruin your own life with truth, you notice everything. The woman at the bus stop scratching a lottery ticket. The way the laundromat light flickers like it owes someone money. The door to room 12 opening like a throat about to swallow. I didn't rush in. I waited long enough to realize waiting was a personality trait and not a strategy. I thought about family and revenge and betrayal like they were 3 brands on the same aisle. I thought about how I had once called our love forever and then, later, toxic love when I needed a term strong enough to make me feel less foolish. At 9:17 p.m., I walked across the parking lot like a man delivering a sermon to a congregation of one. Buddy opened the door to my knock with the specific grin of a man who has never studied consequences. "Hey, man," he said, like we weren't two people negotiating the price of my humiliation. "She's not—" "I know," I said. "I know what she is, where she is, Who you are. My wife stood behind him, and even now the detail that sticks is the way she held the corner of the motel bedspread like she was steadying herself on a cliff that keeps repeating. Her eyes were wide, dark, beautiful, wrong. "Please," she said, "can we talk?" Buddy's cab light glowed through the curtains, a dumb sun. I went in. It smelled like cheap soap and decisions. She started with the softest weapon, regret. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. And it's true. No one ever means to. They mean to feel less alone, and then find out loneliness is the most faithful thing in any room. "I thought it was overtime," I said, and the parody of my own sentence made me laugh in a way that scared me. "We started talking," she said. "He was sweet." And Buddy, God bless the audacity, shrugged like he was a holiday. "We're having a baby," he said, skipping all the ways one could have made that sentence hurt less. People blame the woman. People blame the man. I blame the willingness to believe the small new thing is better than the big old work. I blame the way American stories have taught us that a meet-cute can erase a mortgage. "We have to do a test," I said. "If it's mine, I will be a father. If it's not, I will be a man who knows where the exit is." "You always loved rules," she said, and you'd think that would feel like a knife, but it felt like a postcard from the person I used to be, a guy whose plans were sturdy even when the world blew sideways. "And you loved being adored," I said. "By me when I had bandwidth, by him when I ran out." This is the conspiracy part, if you need one. The way two people can decide history will pivot around their private ache, and they build a tiny nation in the back of a taxi, and they believe traffic laws are metaphors for something larger. But there was also the fantasy, the part where I wanted her to say, "It's you," and the baby would be born looking like my mother's side of the family with that little chin notch that shows up in Christmas photos. We did the test. The clinic made us appointments like it was normal to schedule a referendum on your identity. The technician had a voice like a Sunday school teacher. The form asked for my email, my address, my consent to receive a result I would read in a backyard 3 weeks later. I should tell you, she tried to end it then. She said she would cut it off with Buddy, and I believed her for 48 hours because hope is a narcotic with excellent brand marketing. I should tell you he sent me a text that said, "We can be men about this," as if masculinity were an insurance rider on heartbreak. I should tell you she put her head in my lap and cried in the living room while a sitcom made jokes about an affair on the TV and how the laugh track sounded like a jury. Late that week, in the kitchen we chose for its island and its promise, we had the conversation every couple fears. She told me she had felt invisible. I told her I had been doing the thing fathers, husbands, men are told to do: provide, plan, protect. She told me she wanted to feel the thrum of a new story. I told her life has thrums if you listen. We argued, and then we held hands, and then we slept like people who share a bed, but not a dream. At 2:12 a.m., her phone lit up with a message that only said, "You up?" And she reached for it like a first language. The truth is never an intruder. It pays the mortgage and waters the plants. It knows the Wi-Fi password. The next morning I said, "If it's his, I won't be the third adult in a 2-person play." She nodded, and I saw something like relief cross her face, which told me more about our marriage than any therapist could have in 6 months. I'm not a hero in this story. I'm just a man who chose the clean pain over the slow one. After the envelope in the yard, after the blue confetti and the neighbor's eyes and the taxi driver's grin faltering at the edges, there's a phase no one likes to film, the part with the paperwork. We think of revenge as cinematic. Often it's a stack of forms and a lawyer who says, "I've seen worse," like it's a bedtime story. I filed. She moved out, not to Buddy's place immediately, but to a friend's apartment with too many throw pillows and a balcony where she could practice being someone new. My mother said, "Families survive worse." And I said, "We aren't built for this model." There are towns in America where you can sue the interloper. Ours is not one of them. I dreamed briefly of a banner flown over the stadium that read, "Cheating wife," with a phone number for the taxi company. But that's the toxic love hangover talking. I wanted to be cruel enough to feel better. I settled on something else. The revenge was rehabilitation. Not hers, mine. I started running because I needed my body to carry me when my mind wanted to hitchhike. I joined a men's group at the community center where the coffee always tastes like apologies and we learned to say words like boundaries without smirking. I cooked for myself like I was someone worth serving. I reconnected with my brother, who said, "Man, we all wanted to throw that cake in the pool," and we laughed until it felt like a reset button. The way family can sometimes be a gentle catastrophe that makes room for the truth. The only theatrics I allowed myself were tasteful. I sold the Camry and bought a used pickup that smells like cedar and music, and I put a sticker on the back window that says "Trust but verify" in small letters only I can read in the rear view. I put a tiny dash cam on my porch light, not because I expected anyone to circle, but because feeling safe is a project you can work on with tools. I started a podcast because it's America, and of course I did. It's called Meter Running, and the first episode is called How to Laugh at the Worst Day of Your Life Without Becoming the Joke. I tell the story backward like this, and I invite people to send in their own small conspiracies, their own trick endings, their own overtime that wasn't. It turns out people want to talk about betrayal the way they want to talk about weather, constantly, and with an expertise born from standing in storms. The show found an audience, which is another way of saying the audience found each other. Women listen and write, "I was her once. I hate that girl. I miss her." Men listen and write, "I wanted revenge. I wanted to be a father even if I wasn't. I wanted to leave and never send my new address." If this were fantasy, it would end with me meeting someone at a farmer's market who laughs at my jokes and loves my dog and thinks podcasts are cute. Real life is weirder and also kinder. I met someone at a parent-teacher night, my niece's, where we both were seated in chairs designed for people whose concerns include crayons drying out. She said, "I liked your episode about not letting the worst person in your story become the narrator." We got coffee. We didn't solve anything. We made a plan to hike a small hill and not turn it into an allegory. As for my ex, saying ex is both a release and a bruise. She had the baby. He is beautiful in the way that all babies are, small and terrifying and capable of making adults organize their lives around naps. Buddy posted photos with captions that performed fatherhood in a tone I have decided to forgive. He has not driven past my house. If he did, the porch light would be on because I am not the man in the dark anymore. The last time we spoke, she said, "I wish we could have kept the good parts." And I said, "We can. We just don't get to keep them together." That's the thing about family. Sometimes it survives by changing shape. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not pretend anymore. People ask me if I'm angry. I am sometimes, at the story we told, at the American myth that marriage is an autopilot you can set, at the way cheating sounds like a small crime when it's a demolition permit for a home you both paid for. But most days, I am something quieter. Resolved. Betrayal knocked. I answered. Infidelity tried to explain itself with dim light and new car scent. I took notes and then handed the story back to myself. If there is a moral, it is not never trust. It is build a life you can trust even if other people park in it badly. If there is a punchline, it is not the cake, or the balloon, or the taxi driver's smirk, or even the blue confetti that fell into the grass and still shows up months later like a tiny anniversary of a day I survived. The punchline is that I am still here, breathing, laughing sometimes, loving carefully, and making peace with the truth that the ending is a beginning if you play it backward long enough. And if you need the headline because the internet taught us to compress our pain into slogans, here. I thought she was doing overtime. My cheating wife took rides instead. The meter ran out. The bill came due. I paid mine in grief and then in growth. That's not the cleanest revenge, but it's the kind that doesn't rot your teeth when you smile.